Hi guys! I hope you guys are all doing well. I am trying this video a little bit different than the videos I normally do. Normally whenever I film videos, I film the process and then I'll add a voiceover later. In this video, I'm going to be trying filming while I'm talking and while I'm drawing. We will see how it goes. I'm just trying it out. Hopefully I don't ramble too much. But yeah, I want to do a lighting study, so I have my handy dandy reference here, and I already have my sketch done. To start, I'm just going to change my layer to multiply, and I'm going to go to my curves tool and just increase it to make my lines red. And then I'm going to get started. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to lay in a red since the background is red in this photo. And the reason why I do this is if you're working from a white canvas and I start to try and lay down colors, sometimes the colors look different if you add your background colors later. So I'm just going to go ahead and get that out of the way. And then what I'm going to do is, let me choose a different color. I'm going to take my lasso tool and just carve out the main shape of the character. This doesn't have to be perfect. I am just getting a rough shape in. Some of the edges you'll see are a little wonky, but that's okay because we'll clean that up later. And what I'm gonna do a new layer, and I'm gonna set this layer to clipping mask, and then I'm just gonna go in with all of the base colors. So for this one, we can do the hair really quick. This lighting study, I'm more so worried about the skin in this study. So the hair is I'm not super concerned about the hair. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it. Sometimes I'll take my lasso tool and just boop. And when I say lighting study, I'm concerned with how the light reacts, not necessarily the exact colors. So I'm not doing a color study where I'm trying to get the exact colors from the photo. I'm not going to spend a lot of time worrying about if it's exactly matching the reference. I think that's one thing that I tend to get really caught up on. Oh my gosh, why does it keep doing that? That's one thing that I tend to get really caught up on whenever I'm doing studies sometimes is making it look exactly like the reference. And I feel like that's not really necessary. I feel like whenever you are doing studies like this, it's to learn, and learning exactly how to copy this isn't really, you can get more out of it if you actually just study the way that the light moves and things like that. I'm actually going to use this base layer as the skin. I'm going to set it to alpha lock and just have a little bit of blush coming through and color the lips. And I also need to color the eyes. A lot of times whenever I'm doing regular drawings, I will put all of this stuff on separate layers. A big reason why I put my things on separate layers is so I can change colors and things later if I want to, like the hair, for example. I could alpha lock this and see how she's got some brown up at the top. I can add that in easily without really affecting the skin. That's why I like to work this way. I just find it easier than working on a single layer for everything. But for a study like the eyes and stuff, I'm not going to put everything on a single layer just because it's kind of unnecessary, to be honest. I'm just trying to learn, so I'm not super concerned with changing colors and all that stuff. So now I have a new layer. It's still under my sketch layer, but I'm going to set this layer to multiply, and I'm also going to set it to clipping mask, and I'm going to drop in a shadow color. I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to get my eraser and set it to a soft airbrush, and I'm just going to kind of erase away this light part. And the reason why I'm doing this is to just kind of give me a base shadow to work with. You could, if you wanted to, go in and brush in all of these shadows. I just lay it in and then erase, just because I find it easier a lot of times. And then the way that I tend to work is I like to build up my shadows. So I will set another multiply layer, and what I'm doing right now is just basically getting the big shapes in, so the biggest shadows. So if I were to look at this photo and just break it into light and dark, this part, all of this side of her face would be dark, and then this part is light, right? And that's kind of what I've got going on here. And then from these shadows, I can look and see, well, what's darker. I will take a brush with a little bit of an edge to it and just kind of start painting in those shadows. And I feel like building up your shadows this way just makes it a lot less intimidating. I know I tend to get very overwhelmed if I feel like there's too much going on at one time. So if I were to start with the shadows and worry about all these like tiny little details in the shadows, I would never get anything done. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of shadows for the hair. And again, I can continue to build this up. So even though I'm adding in these shadows right here, you can see like right here, it's super dark. Like this is not dark enough right now. But again, once we start going in and darkening things even more, it'll start to come together. There might be a quicker way of doing this. I just find that being patient and just moving step by step gives me the best results, and I don't feel super overwhelmed when I do it this way. There's a little bit of a shadow under her nose. Her eyes are super dark. It almost looks like eyeshadow. I think it's a shadow. We're just gonna go with it. There's a little bit of shadow here and under the lip. I feel like there's a good bit of shadow. Whoop, a bit of shadow right here, and then I use my smudge tool quite a bit also. And then I'm gonna go in with another multiply layer, is start using my lasso tool, because I've talked about before, you want to make sure you have hard and soft edges. The lasso tool is really good. Ooh, look at that. Like, yeah, just having a mix of hard and soft edges is gonna really help you get a cool effect, and it gives it a lot more interest. And so using the lasso tool really helps get those hard edges especially. And then you can also like smudge it out if it's too harsh or you don't want it to be so noticeable. So that's all I'm doing, is just going and filling in some hard edges. Sorry, I hum a lot, especially I'm one of those people that like I have to fill the silence, and I hum quite a bit. I said I wasn't going to spend like any time on the hair, and that's kind of all I've done so far. Maybe something like that. There's a little bit, very, very soft bit right there. I'm trying to keep in mind too, I will be going back and where I've added all these red lines, I will go in and like darken those here in a minute. Sometimes I like to add just a little bit of, I believe it's called occlusion shadow. That's where there's basically no light hitting it. So all these like super dark areas, the reason they're so dark is because there's like no light hitting them, right? And that's just what I'm kind of adding in here. Let's go in with a little bit of highlight. So I tend to use either overlay or soft light for highlights. And let me do a soft brush. I really love overlay for just having that glowy look. Look at that, like that's so cool. Yeah, it's just an easy way to get a lot of glow. I do feel like you have to be a little bit strategic with it. Otherwise it will be too much very quickly. But I think that's okay. And I specifically did not set this one to clipping mask. If I did, you see how I lose that like glowy kind of look, which I tend to like, so I'm just gonna leave it like that. And then I'm gonna do another, just same way with shadows, I like to set another, let's do hard light. Same way with shadows for my highlights and my lighting, I like to stack my layers. And this time I'm gonna go in with another, that same brush that has a hard edge, because there's a little bit of like a shadow right here between this area of light and this area of light. And so to get that, I'm going to just erase right there just a little bit. Before I start rendering on top of all of my layers, one more thing I want to do is there looks to be some bounce light. So you see this like yellowy golden light, but then there's also these blues on her face, maybe a little bit of purple. I want to also capture that. I'm going to start with I'm going to start with a soft light layer. And this is what I think really helps take your art to like another level is if you start incorporating bounce light. And I'll show you the difference here in a second, what that looks like of like with bounce light versus without. And I'll show you the effect that it gives because I think it's makes like a really big impact. Okay, just to show you guys. So this is without any bounce light and this is with bounce light. It just gives a little bit more stuff to it. And now what I want to do, I'm going to do another light layer. And this time, let's go with hard light. Whenever I'm doing light, one thing I really love to do is use, instead of using like pure white, I feel like that really washes out your colors. And so one thing I love to do is pick bright blues and turquoise and sometimes like a bright yellow, like a neon yellow even. Use those for your highlights. I think it makes a huge difference. I'm actually going to do that on a normal layer. So I have my basic shadows and lighting here. One more thing. So this specific photo, one reason why I really liked it is there's these cool lighting effects where it almost looks like a little rainbow right there. There's a bright bit of red. I do want to add that in. So instead of just like painting it in, I will eventually kind of add paint to it. But one thing I kind of want to do is, let's start with overlay and see how it looks. I'm going to take a kind of bright red and take a soft light or a soft brush and just lightly kind of add in right where the shadow and the lighting meet. I want to just barely add that in, and then I'm going to actually erase some of that so it's not so intense. Yeah, so one really cool thing about doing your lighting and shadows on these layers is whenever you, this is actually vivid light, but one thing, whenever you lay your shadows down and then you lay your lighting on top, if it overlaps, it'll give that really pretty glow to it, which I always think is really fun. I really like that. I am going to add, because I like that little effect that it gives. I don't want to overdo it, which I fear that I may be overdoing it. But that's okay. But yeah, it helps give that little orangey glow to it. And now what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to go on top of all of my layers and do a normal layer. I'm going to start out with my marker multiply brush, which is, that's the same brush that I use to sketch everything. And I'm going to make sure the opacity is all the way up. And I'm just going to go over some of the lines that were turned red, and just to bring them back out. This is just a study, so I'm not super concerned with it looking super pretty and detailed. A lot of times I'll put like a timer on myself. Whenever you put time limits on yourself, it kind of forces you to focus on what you want to focus on. So like at the beginning where I said I wasn't really going to spend a long time on the hair, if I have a time limit, then I really can't focus a lot of time on the hair because I only have so long. You know what I mean? Got the eyes. Something like that. Anyway, I was on a side quest with the eyes, so back to our regular quest, which was to outline some of these lines that I lost when I made them red. Sometimes I line the cheek and sometimes I will kind of leave it, just depending on my mood and just also how it looks. I think I will line it in this one though. I don't know, her eyes are kind of bothering me, but again, that's not really the point of this study, so I'm gonna begrudgingly ignore it for now. Add a little bit of these lines back to the ears, because I lost it whenever I added that vivid light. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do, I'm going to pick the darkest dark on my canvas. So in this case, I think it's this right here. I'm gonna do another normal layer, and I tend to, you'll notice that I tend to, whenever I render, I will render on multiple layers. So I will render a little bit and then I'll check my progress by turning the layer on and off. And if I like it, I will add a new layer on top and start working again. And if I don't like it, I will just erase the bits that I don't like and restart. Let's see. So I took my darkest dark on the canvas and I'm going to go into, again, some of these occlusion shadows and add in some of these super dark shadows. And this stage is also for cleaning up any wonky lines. You can see like here, my sketch and the white of her like tank top don't match up because whenever I was coloring, I was I was just like throwing colors on top of everything. So now I get to go back and clean up all of my mess. So this is just me doing that. And again, like I'm just picking colors off the canvas at this point. I'm not really adding a lot of new colors. I will here in a minute actually for the whitest highlights. I don't like to use layer modes for those like bright highlights just because the colors will change and I feel like it kind of washes it out, the brightness that I want. So I will actually add those in my rendering stage. I'm not sure if I like this part of the thing, so I can just turn it off and on and see if I like it, which I don't think I do. So I'm gonna take that off. I can't really get her eyes to look right. I've seen a lot of artists say this before, but you really can't fix, like no amount of coloring will fix a bad sketch. I run into that all the time. I never ever learned my lesson because I felt like the eyes were a little bit wonky when I started my sketch and I was just like, oh, I'll fix it. I'll fix it later. And here's later and nothing is being fixed. Here we are. We're gonna call that good enough. So for highlights, so these are the very small little highlights. I want to be very sparing with these highlights. I do feel like you can definitely overdo it, so you just have to be careful with it. Lightly place it in spots where you see it. And there's a good one right here. Sometimes I will also use the lasso tool, so you can kind of see right here, there's like a little bit of that bright white. And I will smudge it a little bit. Yep, so it's not super intense, but it's still there. And then, let's see. Can't forget the eyes, that's the best part. Erase the edges a little bit, just to make them a little bit more crispy. And then you can see down here, there's like a little bit of lighting on the lips like that. And down here. And I'm gonna smudge it a little bit, just to, so it's not so obvious. Obviously. Okay, this is where we are so far, and I think I'm gonna darken this just a little bit. Smudge that out a little bit so it kind of still has that glowy look, but I also darken that shadow a little bit. I think I am also gonna darken this area over here. I'm gonna set another layer, and I think I'm gonna darken this a little bit. Yeah, I feel like that needed to be darker. I kind of want to also maybe make it a little bit more blue. So sometimes, I know this is a lighting study, but again, like I said, I don't want it to, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same colors for me. I just want to learn how the light interacts. And so what I mean by that is on her lips, for example. And normally whenever I'm painting, I don't really notice this little like line of light on the lips like this. Also on the nose, if we look, there's like a little bit of blue right there that I could also add in. But it's little things like this that I think you can take with you to other paintings, and it'll really help you add more to your paintings. I'm not really trying to get the exact color or the exact look of the reference. My goal really is to look at things like this, like I said, this little blue on the nose, and just notice things and try incorporating them and see how they work so I can add them to future paintings. I just feel like these lighting studies are a really great way to just kind of build up your skills, and just studying photos will help you so much in learning how things should look. So kind of as a final thing, this isn't necessarily related to the study per se, but I do like to play around with adding texture. So just to kind of show you what that might look like. Oh, that looks so, look at that, like that's so cool. I have found that if you just add a little bit of texture at the end like this, you can get some really cool effects. It almost makes your whole painting look like it was done with texture brushes. What I've noticed from studying, like Sam Does Arts, for example, I've noticed that he really puts a lot of texture in between where like light and shadow meet. I feel like that's what he does a lot in his work, and obviously it has like a really cool effect. I feel like I have not paid any attention to the eyeballs. I am gonna copy my canvas and paste. I don't normally do this with my lighting studies, but I kind of feel like I don't know. I feel like since I'm showing this one to you guys, it feels like I need to. Yeah, I feel like that originally was too bright. Let me know in the comments if you like videos like these where I'm rambling and blabbering on, or if you would prefer like voiceover videos. I feel like those are usually much more put together, but I don't know, I like filming like this too, so let me know which one you guys prefer. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!